Hello and thank you for watching. This is STSC back again with LEGO Transformers, Dark of the Moon, Shockwave. Now Shockwave never actually transformed in the movie, so I decided to base his alternate mode off of his original Dark of the Moon toys. Since I didn't have any ideas for original alt modes, and personally I think his Studio Series one kinda sucks. All that said, he does end up looking pretty abstract, and is kind of a pretty obvious pile of robot bits. Especially when you turn him around and you can see the back of his head not so subtly hiding. And from the side you can unfortunately see his hand just kind of hanging out under the turret. Easily my favorite part of this mode are the little wheels up front. They were a common detail of all of the Dark of the Moon Shockwave toys, and I managed to have them transform the same way as they do on the Cyberverse Commander and the Voyager. And I was just really happy to get that little detail. And on the side you can see some implied treads. The hose piece I've used is the version from the Bionicle Zamor launchers. I believe they still make this kind of mold, but they usually use a more rigid material, which definitely would not work on this guy. For a size comparison, here we have a minifigure. And here we have Megatron. That's really all there is to say about this space tank, so it's time to transform. And here we have Shockwave in his robot mode, and while he might be a little bit more lean than he should be, I do think he looks really cool. I really love how his ribs slowly get larger as they head towards the top, and it creates this kind of triangular shape to his torso. The wheels I liked from the alt mode continue to be one of my favorite parts of the design, because they form the little cylindrical details on his backpack. Shockwave's normal arm uses the same hand design from my Megatrons, and of course if you don't like how his little banana blade looks, you can always just pop it off. One thing I'm not happy about is how his eye has to be orange. Unfortunately that piece just doesn't come in trans red, or at least not yet. For size comparison, here we have Shockwave with a minifigure. And with Megatron. In the movie, Shockwave is supposed to be the same height as Megatron, if not a little bit taller, but personally I just think he looks better smaller, so I decided to make him just a little bit shorter. And I think it especially helps when you bring in the other two main cons. I really like how no two bots in this lineup are the same height, and I really think the shorter Shockwave helps to bridge the gap between Megatron and his two smaller lieutenants. For articulation, Shockwave's head can swivel and look up and down. In the arms, he has a universal joint at the shoulder, as well as the elbow, so he gets pretty much a full range. And because his hose is nice and flexible and on a set of pivots, he gets full range on his cannon arm as well. At the hips, he has another universal joint, which allows them to go out, as well as forward and back. Then he has kind of a slight rotation at the thigh, and a bend at the knee, which gets roughly 90 degrees. All around, Shockwave is pretty well articulated, though the lack of any ankle pivot can make it a little bit precarious to get him standing sometimes. Well, that's all I have to say about this build, but before I end the video, I want to pose a question. Wouldn't it make a lot more sense for this to be Shock Blast? I mean, he doesn't really seem to be much of a scientist in the movie, and he seems generally pissed off and bloodthirsty. Obviously, most of the Bayverse Decepticons were just bloodthirsty monsters given recognizable names, But I just think it's interesting that Shockwave happens to have a doppelganger who has that personality already. But all that aside, I'll see you next time.